All right, thanks for joining us. We are going to get started here in about 4 minutes. We're just going to wait for some more people to sign up. So you guys are here and hearing me. You are in the right place. So again, in 4 minutes, we'll start with the video and then get going. Again, for those who are still joining us, we're going to wait probably 2-3 more minutes. We'll start with the video and then get right into it. So if you can see and hear me now, that's great. After that, we will get going. All right. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Aaron, and I run our drone department here at Genpack. And we are excited to be doing this presentation for you guys. Of course, everything's different these days with webinars, but I feel like this one is going to be an exciting one to listen to. Couple quick notes. On the side of your screen, you'll see a chat window. There's a few of us here that'll be answering those questions while we have our presenters presenting. So feel free to answer or get any answers in there. And if we don't get to your questions later on, in the chat, we will have a question and answer time at the end. So a little bit about Genpack. We, with our drone department, we offer pretty much everything you'll need to get going with a program, and we'll touch base on that a little bit later on through some strategic partnerships with those like DJI, Aero Drone, and a few others. We really have had great success with what we can help you guys with. So with that, we'll jump to our next slide here. What we're going to be talking today is the implementation of a drone program focusing on Klickitat PUD. And with us today, we have Brandon Johnson and Russ, who's with Klickitat PUD, and Russell with Aero Drone. If you guys want to pop on real quick, we'll make sure your audio is working. If you guys want to say hi.
Hey, everybody.
Hi. Glad to be here and looking forward to it.
Awesome. So they're going to be our main two presenters today. And like I said, on the side of your screen, it's on the right side of my screen, is your chat box. Like I said, shoot out any questions. And if they're directed at someone specific, we can get those to the guys later on. As well as there will be a link to our website if you want more info to get quotes or any information similar to the drone you saw in the video we made that started us off. And then there's also going to be a few different polls throughout the webinar to get some interaction. So feel free to answer those. And with that, we'll lead off with Brandon.
All right, well, thanks, Aaron. You hear me okay?
Doing great.
All right. So again, I'm Brandon Johnson with Klickitat PUD. I am the engineering tech and UAS coordinator. I've been here for about 13 years now. In my prior life, I was pretty heavily into real estate. I was a title examiner for right around 10 years. Pretty extensive knowledge and background on real estate matters, and pretty extensive easement experience, which has played in pretty big for helping the utility out and the wearing of multiple hats, I should say. So during my time here in the last 13 years, I have designed miles of distribution line, miles of transmission lines. So I've got a pretty broad knowledge of the utility industry as a whole. And currently I've been focused on special projects, one of which is drone inspections. So and I can turn it over to Russ now, and he can tell you a little bit about himself.
Hi, Russ Hargrave, and I'm with Aero Drone. We've been working in the drone industry really since 2015, and have been offering a broad range of services from consulting to training to flight services, and most recently software. And I look forward to telling you a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation today.
Okay, thanks, Russ. So a little background on Klickitat PUD. So KPUD, we're a pretty small public utility district in South Central Washington State. We have 86 employees, and of which we take care of about 13,000 customers. And we have 1,900 square miles of service territory. And 1,350 miles of overhead distribution line across the county, and we extend into parts of our neighboring counties as well. We also provide water and wastewater to about 2,500 customers. And if that wasn't enough, we also have a renewable natural gas project located on a really large landfill located in our county. It's pretty technologically advanced. We also have partial ownership in White Creek Wind and also ownership in a turbine at McNary Dam. So we got a lot going on. We own and operate 16 substations, and those are distribution substations. We also have 7 230 kV substations and about 50 miles of 230 kV transmission lines for all of that, which transmits power generated from wind turbines along the Columbia River and injects that into Bonneville's transmission system. So we've had our 230 kV business line for about 18 years, and our inspection methods from year to year, we are required to inspect that. Since that's part of the bulk electric system, we're required by the federal government to inspect it once a year. And that was fine and dandy over the last 2 decades up to now. A new system, it's pretty healthy, but starting to age, and we're needing to really start taking a closer look at things. And that's essentially why we got into drone inspections to begin with. So I want to talk to some about our prior inspection methods and what's kind of been getting us by over the years. So what you're looking at here is an inspection sheet that our inspection crews would use on our 230 system. And essentially what it's saying is that on a particular structure, they would do a visual inspection from essentially a single vantage point using binoculars. And it's due to the inaccessibility of the line, essentially. These lines are built in fairly remote locations. They're not along roads for the most part. So fairly hard to get to, time consuming to get to them. So the easy thing is to find a high point, use your binoculars, make sure the arms are in good shape, make sure the conductors are in the air, all looks well. And that's fine and dandy on the new system. But as our infrastructure ages, we need to start taking a closer look at some things. And sometimes too, on just keep it on this prior inspection method. It's affirmation that the crews or the inspection team or whatever, they were at the site, they did look at these things, and they would note that, if it needed something, they added something to it. There would be a written record saying that we added a couple of peanuts, or we added a guy marker, or we checked guy tensions and things like that. So we did try to document that. It just is not taking a close enough look at it at this point. So the limitations of that inspection method. So you can't really get the detail we need from single vantage point inspections. So, and if we were going to roll up on these structures and try to get a good inspection like that picture, of the top of these things, some of these structures are over 100 feet tall. And a lot of our equipment, it just is not big enough to get that high. And also, to get that high, you have to get so close to these energized lines. And on 230, where we're not insulated for that, you'd have to take an outage to get close enough to get a really detailed look at some of these widgets, parts and pieces of the structures. And we call that the MAD distance, that max approach distance. So in order to do the inspections, taking down lines, not really something that we would like to do. It interferes with the generation sites, it interferes with the customers in general. And it's not just the height of these structures. Again, the remote, physically getting the equipment to them is a challenge. Setting up on them can be a challenge, even if there's not a super tall structure, because the landings that were created to create it may not be large enough now, or has kind of decayed over time as far as sloughing and whatnot to actually set up very easily on these things. As we all know, it's not always sunny, right? So getting into these locations during wet conditions, during farming time, there's wheat on the ground. It's kind of hard to justify driving across someone's field just for an inspection. So those are some of the limitations that we've had to deal with. And that is why we've used the binocular method and single vantage points. So when we were looking at increasing the detail of our inspection methods, we looked at alternative methods. One of them was helicopters. So when we evaluated helicopters, they typically run about $1,000 an hour. And we estimated about 5 minutes per structure to get the amount of detail that we would need around each structure, looking at the cotter pins, looking at all of the attachments and things. We figured five minutes per structure was a fair number to put on these things. And given the fact that we have about 50 miles of transmission line to inspect every year, that turns out to about 30 hours of flight time. So we were going to get some semi-detailed to pretty detailed pictures back. Chances are there that we would miss some things using that inspection method unless we wanted to throw more time at it. So at a minimum, we were looking at $30,000 for a helicopter inspection, which did not include post-processing and data analysis. So if we had the vendor or the provider of the services do that analysis for us in the end, we were looking at costs upwards of $55,000 to $80,000 for a helicopter inspection. The other method we evaluated was third-party drone inspections. And, as we all know, I mean, you get really good, really high detailed information back on these things. The downside on the third-party inspection, though, was the cost. And since these are yearly inspections, those add up big time. So the third-party drone inspection we were quoted $300 per structure. And given the amount of structures over that 50 miles, we were looking well over $100,000 for a one-time drone inspection, but it did include post-processing and analysis of that imagery. But that's a lot of money on a yearly basis to get that high detail. So we started to grow our vision for drone use and the things that we wanted to get out of our program. And we wanted to reduce our risk when I say that, I mean reduce risk to our personnel, improve our efficiencies. We wanted to improve our reliability, outage response. How can we use that for that? And also get all of those benefits, but at the same time control our costs. So let's look at that in some more detail here. So reduce our risk. So just like most public utilities, or maybe any or most utilities in general, we all have aging infrastructure. And a lot of KPUD system has extremely poor access to it. And as we all know, outages and bad weather, they happen. It's just a matter of when. So during large outage events, we're planning to deploy our drones to cover more ground and cover it faster without putting our personnel into unknown conditions. Why put your personnel out there if you don't even know there's a problem on that particular segment? Send the drone in first. It's going to provide that safety net, and you're going to figure out if you need to put those resources there or not pretty fast. And I would chalk that up to a reactive inspection. An outage happened, but we're looking at maybe a larger scale event. Let's get those drones out there. Our resources are stretched a little thin, and we're going to reduce risk to our employees. Improve efficiencies. So without drones, inspections were typically used by climbing poles, using bucket trucks, using binoculars, doing line patrols on foot, or riding ATVs. But the ground-based inspections, they lack that detail and that speed and flexibility that you can get with a drone. So using drones, we can inspect those pole tops, especially along busy corridors. We have Highway 97 running right through the center of our county, and we have main lines right up next to it. You can set up pretty easily in a small truck. You can do these pole top inspections along that busy corridor without having to do a lane closure or set up any kind of traffic diversions or anything like that. We've used these drones to inspect overgrown right-of-ways where it would be a challenge to walk through these places on foot. And it's just so more efficient. It's so much faster than an on-foot inspection. The bonuses with the right-of-way inspections that we've done is that we've got a pre-right-of-way and a post-right-of-way picture. If we go through there and fly it to begin with, we can talk to the tree crews and say, okay, we can basically tailboard on the project and go and fly it after the fact, and we have a detail and a history and a log of that right-of-way being to spec. And then if next year, say, a dead tree is spotted in that particular section, we would know by looking at the historical data that, you know, we had this thing cleaned out. That's a new tree that died, not one that got missed previously. And also we can do what we sought after to do, and that's to inspect our 230 kV and get that highly detailed inspection that we are honestly really needing at this point. And improve reliability, more detailed and accurate data. I mean, that's what I've been talking about. It allows us to do more proactive inspections and identify more defects, things that you just physically cannot see from the ground. And we're hoping that those inspections, these proactive inspections, are going to lead to fewer outages and reduce our repair costs, because we're going to be able to identify damage early and repair it before it's a catastrophic event or it's a bigger deal. And here we're back to reactive maintenance and things like that. And we're going to save unplanned outages. I mean, we will be able to control when that outage happens, when that repair work happens. And again, you know, you're saving costs because you're limiting the damage and being able to do it during normal working hours along the way. Outage response, touch on that a little bit more. Natural disasters, you know, they do happen. Luckily, they don't happen all the time, but we really want to use these drones as a first responder and send them into these unknown conditions and keep our employees' risk to a minimum. And it's really going to allow us to get that right equipment to the right location and do it efficiently and just be effective on power restoral, you know, fast and efficient. And a lot of times we've had roads blocked by floods, could be landslides, whatever, snow. You know, it's no fun trudging through 4 feet of snow on snowshoes just to go see that, you know, there's no issue on this line segment. You know, again, we're going to use those drones in that way, and it just adds up. Outage response time, safety, the whole thing. Controlling costs. So if we go back to our prior inspection methods and we just look at that for a minute. So we know that we need to improve our inspection method, right? So we're just not getting the detail we need. So if we improved our ground-based inspections, there's no way to compare apples to apples, ground-based versus aerial inspection of any type. So in order to improve our ground-based inspection, we'd have to essentially spend more time per structure, access to every structure, get those really close as we can inspections from the ground. And the added time to that, we were looking at about $36,000 a year just for an improved inspection from the ground. Again, helicopters were $1,000 an hour, so you know, we're looking somewhere between $55,000, $80,000 for a helicopter inspection per year. And I'm only talking about the 230 kV system at this point. The drone inspection, the third-party drone inspection, again, $108,000, over $100,000 per year. But yeah, you're going to get incredible data back. But that's a pretty big cost to swallow each year for these inspections. And then our in-house drone inspections. You know, the last quarter of last year, we started down this path, and we were just under $60,000 investment at that point, and that's with training and policies and procedure setups and trying to work into our methods. You know, all that labor, the behind the scenes stuff that needs to go into this program. And purchasing the equipment, you know, the widgets, the actual drone, the cameras and things like that. So right around 60 grand last year. This year we're looking at about 18 to 20, somewhere right in there, with some additional purchases on equipment and getting some more members to our team. And the added benefits, so that's a pretty small cost, but we get all this added benefit on the ways that we can use this tech, and whether that's storm damage, fire response, right-of-way clearing, troubleshooting momentary outages. The list honestly goes on and on. We keep finding more and more ways to use this technology to our benefit. So vision implementation, several years ago, people talk about drones. Yeah, how cool would it be to have a drone? And, there's so many cool things we could do, but how do you get started? And there's a use for them. There's no question to it. But what are the steps to get there? And that was what our challenge was, and honestly was a challenge. But when we started going down the path of really, okay, now it's time. We really want to start going and analyze where are the cost savings, what are the benefits to having a drone program. There was no resources out there that we could go pull from. You talk to neighboring utilities, and yeah, they've thought about it, and but nobody had an operational program for us to draw from. And that's how publics work, is we're fairly open source with each other, and that wasn't working out too well. So I was at a Dallasport, I don't know if you're familiar, right across from the Dallasport Air Show several years ago, and Aero Drone had a booth set up down there, and there was a couple of 20-something teenagers manning that booth. And I just happened to go in and talk to them, and and look at their technology, and I knew there was a place for it one day. Just at the time, there wasn't. So, but they were very knowledgeable on what they knew. They were the pros, and kind of envied that at the time. It was pretty cool. So I contacted Mike Davis with Aero Drone last year, and I said, hey, can you help us out? I don't even know where to start. And we kicked off some meetings and started talking about our vision, what we wanted to get out of this, and they really helped us incorporate their knowledge into the utility industry. So what we did is we assigned 3 members of our engineering team to get the program off the ground, and I don't really mean to throw puns at it, but it's true. And so basically we had to start from scratch, and we didn't even know terminology. What is a 107? This was a whole new realm for us. But Aero Drone came in, and their intent and their goal was to set up a professional program for us and really help us through that. And the key there is set that program up, and the public's perception of your program needs to be that you have a professional program. That is really key. But adding this job function to our already multiple hat wearing throughout our days, since we're a small utility, we do so many different, just such a variety of work, that it was a real challenge to add this additional hat to our core day-to-day business of power. So this year we've added several new pilots to our drone program. We're now up to 3 drones, but our hope is that we can spread the workload out across a few more people to not overburden just 1 or 2 or 3 people. But KPUD and Aero Drone, we brought industry terms from both sides, and really we melded those together into a pretty cohesive drone program. We took baby steps into this. We were very methodical. We didn't want to go too fast and go by the biggest, baddest. We wanted to see what we could get by with, small. There's a lot of stuff you can go and do with a small drone. It's pretty incredible. But we developed a roadmap for our drone program. We attended Aero Drone's Flight Academy, their training program. It was pretty intense. I think the 3 pilots that went through his course didn't think we were going to pass. It was pretty overwhelming, but we all passed. So kudos to Mike for a job well done. But we spent over 100 hours of training over about a 2-month period. And it's we developed an inspection method. There is a certain methodology that has to go into this, and there's a lot of data. Man, there is so much data that comes from these things. But the baby step into this thing and recognize those things and deal with, how are you going to deal with your data? How are you going to incorporate that into your business line? How are you going to use the data and file it away to where you could pull it back out and query it later? Get your IT departments on board with this thing. The policy creation, best practices, you really need to ensure that you're FAA compliant. These are things that utilities don't think about because we're not pilots. But Aero Drone also provided us with software for mission planning, resource allocation. Since we've got multiple drones and 7 pilots, resource allocation and knowing where those things are, that's key anymore. But they really took us from 0 drone experience to being able to fly professionally. If I go back a little bit to your development of processes and developing your procedures, you can get overwhelmed pretty easily. So, they are the professionals to guide you, to help you through and to incorporate this into your business model. And they did a great job. I mean, they are the experts in drone tech. Go to the experts for that stuff. They came in, they looked at our IT department, they looked at our storage, they looked at our GIS, they looked at our engineering, how we write sheets for work orders, and they really made a pretty cohesive integration for KPUD for sure. And I think putting the time and effort in on the forefront there is going to help you with your public perception later, and making sure that you are out there to perform a task, to do the job, and do it professionally. So I'd like to turn it over to Russ for right now and have him talk a little bit about Aero Drone.
Hi, thanks, Brandon. And I got to say, we really enjoyed working with the Klickitat PUD team for a couple reasons. One is they really wanted to set up a professional drone program. They were concerned about the level of professionalism and also, as Brandon said, the public perception, being a utility. And that was wonderful for us. The other thing is just how hard they worked. This was on top of their regular jobs, and the training we put them through was pretty rigorous. The other work in developing the processes and documents, a lot of extra work, and yet they went at it so hard that they were able to get value from using the drones in the field and learning some pretty dramatic results within the first 6 months. And Brandon will share some of those results with you in a few minutes. I want to just talk a little bit more about the consulting that we did and the software that they're using. So as Brandon said, we went in and sat down with them and documented what was the vision, where were they trying to go, what were they trying to use it for, how are they going to measure success. We took a good look at some of their operational and strategic critical success indicators to understand what was important to them. And we did a pretty detailed assessment of their processes and tools and the capabilities. And from that, we were able to understand by comparing the goals and the state of the current operations, where we needed to do work, where we needed to produce documents. And so we went to work. We put a training plan in place immediately, and we started working on the processes that they would need. Fortunately, we've done this before, and we have a lot of best methods and documents available, and we understood their workflow, how they think about things and how they call things, what terminology they use, that is. So we were able to put together the right roles for the way they wanted to run their operation, the right processes, and dovetail that into the processes and procedures they already had, and make sure that it fits within their strategic goals and their strategic policies. Part of the work that we did, as Brandon said, is to create a detailed operations and safety manual. We have a suite of these documents. Some are much more complicated than others. And because we understood really what they needed, I mean, it's a relatively small operation. And so we were able to produce a streamlined document that fits their needs and is completely comprehensive enough to meet the FAA requirements. In fact, the document is the basis for a certificate of compliance that we're working with KPUD on getting right now. So coming in with an operations manual and being able to customize that for KPUD is one of the big loads that I think a lot of enterprises face as they try and get into this for the first time. That allowed them to really concentrate on their training and to move forward really quickly with setting this program up. As I mentioned, Aero Drone has software, and KPUD is using that kind of to implement this whole thing really as a framework to implement the processes and to ensure that the best methods that they've chosen are followed. And so an example of that is the way the Aero Drone software manages employees and contractors. This screen shows that all the credentials that are required for each employee are up to date. And this is configurable. So an enterprise can decide which credentials they want for which role, and they can decide to distinguish between contractors and employees or not. And the system will ensure that it'll prompt you when you need to update certificates, and it allows you to ensure that the resources assigned to a job have the credentials that you've decided that they have. All of the equipment that KPUD has for their drone program is in the Aero Drone system, and that allows them to track the maintenance, to track reorder status, and to make sure that equipment isn't assigned to a job unless it's in an active status. When resources are assigned to a job, it's done through the central calendar in the system, and this allows coordination across any size of enterprise. You're assigning resources, both human resources and all the equipment, and it identifies any resource contention if it's already assigned on that date for another mission, for example. And so it manages that for you. If you want to schedule it for a particular date, certainly that is common, but a lot of times, in what we discovered with KPUD, they will simply want to put it into a queue. And so as resources become available, this is the next priority in the queue for you to go work on. And that is also a capability that you can do instead of scheduling it for a particular date. The resource scheduler will also allow you to define the type of mission you're going to fly, and it will use a template to establish all of the details for the mission planning. So all of the instructions for, let's say, a structure, you might standardize what those mission steps are so that you can get a level of repeatability and efficiency, but certainly they'd be very different from the mission steps to inspect a substation, for example. And so you can define templates for different types of inspections and select the appropriate template so that all of those mission steps are populated. And then as you're doing the mission planning, you can go in and edit those steps as you wish, but the basic repeatability and reuse of the mission plan is accomplished through the template. Mission planning is done at whatever level you want in terms of detail, but the system supports detailed mission planning so that you can get repeatability. If you're trying to do automated post-processing, for example, you want the same shot taken the same way with the same equipment. And you can put those instructions into the system quite easily, and then they would be reused in the field. Being able to reuse mission steps like this builds a body of knowledge over time. And so you have less and less work to do better and better plans as you refine your mission steps from learning each time you conduct a mission. Once you're done with the mission, the system captures mission data, both metadata like we're showing on this screen. So again, this is configurable, and KPUD has decided to define different types of defects and then different severities for those types: red, green, yellow, etc. The software will capture this, and then you can get a good look at what's going on by looking at where are you getting the most severe defects and when, what time of year, what geographic location, what type of structure. This system will produce the documentation that the FAA would require, such as flight boundaries and flight log and so forth. But it goes way beyond that. And you can do a lot of reporting on your mission as well as the payload data. So here's a screenshot of the system showing not only the metadata, but a pointer over to the actual photograph. And in this case, because KPUD already had a GIS system, we've integrated our system and linked to the photos in their shared file and provided pointers over to their Esri GIS system. So this is a shot of those same results shown graphically. And as I was saying, by capturing metadata, you can quickly get an overview of what all of these different measurements are trying to tell you and where you really have issues. And so in this case, red, green, yellow are a good indicator of where to look. And I'll let Brandon.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. So I want to talk about this kind of ranking system that we've got here, and how to basically put it on into our GIS and see the picture that these inspections are painting. So what you're looking at here is a 230 kV line segment from White Creek substation to Harvest Wind substation, and the following slides, you'll see some pictures of what we found. But we basically ranked them from a broken ground might be chalked up to repair during scheduled downtime, depending on how many broken grounds you find. That severity can go up. If you found every one of your structures had broken grounds, you probably would get out there faster. Urgent, again, non-emergency, but we're going to schedule out in advance an outage, probably to go and fix whatever that might be. And then emergency would be, holy cow, immediate action needed. So you can see on this, I think about 6 miles of line, we found quite a few issues that we've addressed since. So we kicked off our program, our inspection program, and about 3.5 months after that, we started actually inspecting our 230 system. And again, these lines are remote, so we started with where the liabilities may be bigger if there were issues found, and harder to get to areas. We wanted to address those first. So moving on. So high priority issues, these would be chalked up to that red category. So you can see on the lower picture, we got the boxes drawn around with arrows pointing up to that particular clevis or shackle and shackle pin. You can see that those things are backing out, and this is the same photos, just a little bit bigger. So these are moments away from disaster. I mean, that upper left is a big deal. That thing, any more vibrations, that thing's going to keep working itself out, and we're going to have at a minimum an outage, if not structure damage, depending on how that thing comes apart. And with our old inspection methods, may or may not see these, depends on where you're at, using binoculars, looking at these attachments and things. If you're right under it looking at these, chances are you probably would see something like this. But again, you'd have to visit each structure because you never know where this problem is going to lie. And these are 75-foot poles, I think, for the most part on the photos. On this one, again, we had a dead end type assembly unit, and the pin is backing out. And if I drill into this, you'll see now that thing is like pucker factor 11. Holy cow, we need to get out there right now and take care of this thing. I mean, you can see where the cotter pin should be through that hole. That should be clearly through the other side of that shackle. So we saw this and immediately corrected that issue. That was pretty decent find there. And it's things like this. You don't want to find these issues, but you do want to find these issues. But I mean, because these issues are what prove the program. Something like this, where if this particular thing failed, it's very likely to cause a cascading event of damage on your 230. These things are under a tremendous amount of tension. So I am really glad we found that. Things that you would find that you probably actually wouldn't see this from the ground. You would have to be set up in the perfect spot on the ground and almost know that this is up there. A missing nut on the back of a bolt, and this thing's starting to back out. This is on top of a 75-80 foot structure. You'd have to have pretty steady hands with your binoculars to get up there and see that. So, this isn't catastrophe waiting to happen right here yet, but it's definitely something that we addressed. Now, in this center phase of this structure, you can see where this is, maybe chalked up to a yellow. This cotter pin is backing out on the top picture there. As soon as that cotter pin backs out, the pin itself, the shackle pin, is going to start backing out, and it's just not something you want to see. So again, we addressed that, and this is just a small sampling of our 230 system. Now, I put this one in here. I just found it interesting, and it proves the value of this. A damage to some armor rod on a fiber. This is minor damage. It just proves my point that you would never see this from the ground at all. You're looking straight down onto the top of the cross arm, and you're able to see a score mark on the armor rod. I mean, not serious, but you see things that you just can't see any other possible way. This is a picture of a broken ground wire. And my point is on these is, I don't know if you can see what I'm talking about here. I'll circle it. But this ground wire right here, onesies and twosies of these things, not such a big deal, but you're going to have a log to keep track of for follow-up later. But you start getting too many of these things, and a lightning strike is going to potentially damage your equipment back at the station. So again, here's another broken ground wire. There's two. and we can just kind of keep going. We found more than that. There's another one. So as we find more and more of these things, we would map these things on our GIS and then go back and recategorize. They might start off as a small, next planned shutdown, but they could escalate. So what I want to touch on is just the visibility from the air, just like I was talking to you about in the last slides. That upper right photo, so that's Highway 97. You would drive by this on a daily basis and think that looks fine, and it did. But you start drilling into that, and I wish I could zoom into this for you guys, but this pin right here is actually sheared off on the top, and that's a running angle on not super large conductor, but there's some side tension on that. Well, that's moments away from failure. There's only one pin holding something that two pins should be holding, and this is a timbered area, and as you're probably aware, fire risk is on everybody's minds. And the wrong time of year, if this thing comes down, that phase wire, that could be a bigger issue. And we caught this during a right-of-way inspection. We're flying a power line corridor, and we're stopping at dead ends, and we're stopping at angles, and we're looking at the hardware from the top. And I'm glad we did on this. Actually, we found a couple like this. We've corrected them. But again, it goes back to proactive inspections, finding the issue before it's a bigger deal, and you have control over when you take that outage and what repairs you're going to do. It's planned, and get away from that reactive stuff. Also, these lower pictures, same pictures of the same location, just from different north and south, looking at it from different angles. But you can see where that really big dead pine tree is sitting there. And if you're out here on the road, which Highway 97 is right here, and you're looking in at this, you're not going to see that dead pine tree, and it's perfectly visible from the air. I mean, it's a hazard tree, and it's going to get taken care of, and we can go back and fly it later and prove that tree no longer is there, and it's recorded. So these things are huge. It's such a great tool to have. So some key messages at the end, was it worth it? Well, heck yeah, it was well worth it. It's just endless. I mean, we can use this technology in such a variety of ways. I mean, it blows me away how many more uses we're finding for this. But again, right-of-way clearing, transformers, we haven't yet, but we're looking at aerial inspections of transformers, especially with our high zoom cameras, and incorporating infrared in the future. Looking at pole tops. Again, I mean, that one sheared off pin is a perfect example of that. We've used them for radio site surveys, and seeing from point to point on hilltops for radio placement for microwaves and whatnot. We've taken photos of locates from the air, especially coming out of a substation, and use those in tailboard discussions with the crews without having to drive over an hour away to talk about what we're going to do. We have amazing aerial photography showing locates and coming up with that game plan right here in the office. And it's just, everybody's on the same page. It's pretty incredible. But I think having your procedures in place is essential for an effective program. From pilot training, data storage, how you're going to manage that data. There's a lot of components to an inspection program, and so much data can be acquired from this inspection method that you need to have an idea of how you're going to manage that and harness that information to be able to interrogate that and paint the picture with that data later. And and that's so you can deploy your resources effectively and to the right locations, depending on what kind of flight you're doing and what your inspection you're doing. Public perception, huge. You know, but having your policies and procedures and taking the time and effort in the forefront of these things is going to help the public perceive that you are doing the job the way that they expect you to. You know, it's a very professional program. We're out there to do a specific thing. But like, again, you know, you can easily over inspect, and that's what I'm getting to, is you can get so much data, so much information, and find so many things so fast, you can over inspect yourself pretty easy. Don't go out and just try to fly everything at once, because now you can't. I mean, because once you find a problem, you know about it, you're going to have to take care of it. So, you know, think about that. You know, you can cover so much ground, and you might not have the resources to go back and fix them. It might take some time. But I guarantee you, you will find uses beyond your thinking now. I mean, there's so many things that you can do, and just you're going to keep finding them. But the fun part is really how you're going to integrate those into your business line. It's kind of a fun part. You bring your team together, you talk about those things, and you build this thing up. So, you know, Genpack and Aero Drone, you know, they've joined up. They are a solution to look at. They are the professionals when it comes to the FAA, the aerial system part of this. Again, you know, utilities, we don't think that way. So how do you bring those two things together? And they are rock solid on that, between evaluations, training, you know, certifications, equipment sales. These guys really have it covered. They're a pretty cool team. So, you know, flying's the easy part, but don't just go out and buy a drone and start flying, you know. So, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm going to pop on with what you just said there too. I'm going to touch on James got a question over there, and he was asking for recommendations on large mapping projects. If you want to get a hold of us, there's going to be different options that we can kind of go over with that. So feel free to reach out, and we can kind of get you some other options. With the lines we rep, I mean, we do DJI mainly. We have Altel. There's a few others that I feel like are easy to fly, easy to operate. You know, once you get some stick time and the control in your hands, you'll really see how easy it is to do this. So get a hold of us. We'll come out and do some demos and kind of walk through exactly what you're going to need. We're not trying to push the best thing on you. We want to figure out exactly what's going to be best for your operation. And like Brandon mentioned, starting slow. It's that crawl, or the crawl, walk, run type thing. We want to get you guys proficient, because it is a pretty cumbersome thing to take on. But once you get into the rhythm, it's pretty impressive. So again, if you want to ask some questions aside, I'm going to kind of do a little bit of wrap up here, because we're hitting right about the hour mark, which is right where we want to do it. I do see a question up there real quick from Caitlin. Brandon, which three drones do you have there? You have the 210 V2, and what are the other ones?
We've got the we've got the Matrice 210. We have the Mavic Zoom 2 Pro, I think, and then we have the enterprise version of the Mavic Zoom.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, and Caitlin, if you want to reach out to us as well, we'd love to get you some more info on that. Just for a quick overview, the Mavic series is I don't think I have one real close to me, but is a smaller platform that folds up. It's about this big, and then the Matrice is the larger platform. The Matrice has swappable payloads, similar to that Zoom camera I see Mark's been answering as well. It's just a high-powered optical zoom, and it's different payloads. You can do some high-resolution mapping with them. You can do zoom. There's thermal technology in there. There's like the FLIR XT2, which will get you thermal 640 resolution images along with your 4K visible RGB. I don't want to go too deep into it, because we've all talked about it for hours and hours, and you can get off on a random tangent. But I think it's huge watching what you guys can do, because a lot of these are quick deploy for like emergency response. If you've got down lines, you can get out there and check what's wrong, with keeping your staff in a safer position. Mapping, you can get into that with high resolution maps. Your inspection is what you hit on today, and that's huge. I think that's a quick way to see some return on investment. Because like we've talked about before, I don't know that there's a real accurate way to calculate how much money you've saved based on these basic cost-effective ways to get into it.
I can tell you though, Aaron, that some of the 230 issues that we did find with the drone inspections absolutely paid for every ounce of what we put into it so far. When you're talking transmission lines of that scale, a small thing can go big, bad, really quick. So,
yeah, 100% agree with that. And James, so he's asking about the shutters on it. I think the Z30 is a rolling shutter on there, but similar to the Phantom 4 Pro V2, it's a very cost-effective option. That's got a mechanical shutter on it with, I want to say like a 16 megapixel camera. It's a 1-inch sensor. So again, if you want to reach out to us, we'll get you tons more info. Something that might question your thoughts on getting a hold of us if we give you too much info, but we'll walk you through the process. We love talking to people about new programs as well. And another one, like you touched on with the trees, is the veg management. I think it's easy to go patrol a right of way, and with maintaining visual line of sight for the legality part of things with the FAA, you can get a lot of distance out of one flight. That would save your team a ton of time, and again, increasing safety from not having to trudge around in some of the valleys or crawling through and checking stuff out.
So a factoid on that is we covered about 20 miles of line on a right-of-way inspection in about 6 hours of flight time.
Wow. I mean, what would that have taken you guys if you were doing it on foot?
Days. It would have been absolutely days to get that kind of detail and record out of it. Yeah. So when you're doing, that's another thing too, is when you're doing right-of-way inspections, absolutely faster. When you are, again, you can't compare apples to apples on ground inspections and aerial inspections. The 230 inspections is honestly slower, but we need that higher detail.
Right. So just a couple quick things here too. We'll be taking this recording and uploading it to YouTube, and we will send that link out afterwards. That way you can go through and scroll through and pick out different points and go back to different points as well. Again, if there's any last questions, go ahead and send those in now. But feel free to get a hold of us, and we will kind of direct you. If you have any further questions, we can get you in touch with Aero Drone, with Mark and the guys over at Klickitat. Mark's been answering some questions on the side there, and Brandon too. The other thing we can do is get you a bunch of different quotes and talk through different software, talk through different platforms that you guys will want to use, and really get you honed in on what you can. One last question I did have is, how was management receptive to the idea of drones from the beginning?
So we have 3 commissioners here at KPUD. One of them honestly said it's about time. When you hit them up with your, especially us, we have this yearly inspection we have to do, once a year at least. And when you look at those costs alone for our 230 inspections, that alone made sense. I know every utility is different, so you need to find your business case for it, but there's definitely returns on your investment. And with the increased risks and aging infrastructure, it's time to start taking a closer look at things, and this platform is an amazing way to do it.
I agree. I think technology is moving in the right direction, and it's making it easier, safer to yield better product at an easy way to do it. And the other thing too is we've noticed with almost every customer we work with, they go in with 1 or 2 small ideas on how to use these, and then all of a sudden, similar to what you guys are doing, it's just brand new ideas almost daily on what you can use them for and how much they're going to benefit. So,
yep.
Cool. Well, I do appreciate both of you guys being on here. This was full of a ton of great knowledge, and I'm sure that we will get tons of questions in the field for you. So again, if you guys want, go ahead and check out our website, send us some emails. Let's start a conversation, and we can kind of just go from there and get everyone together.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for attending.
Thanks.
Thanks to both of you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
See you guys.
All right.